Hey everyone, Laurel here. Thanks so much for joining me today. I am making a card using some products from the latest Stamp of Approval collection called Winterhaven. I'll put a link below if you want to sign up for the wait list. Everybody on the wait list gets an email link as soon as the collection is available for sale. Once these babies sell out, they're gone. Here's a look at the card I'm going to be making today. Again, all these items are from the Winterhaven collection. This is a look at the ornamental background. This is a fantastic background stamp. I love it. There's so many things you can do with it. I went ahead and put some temporary adhesive on the back of my cardstock, and I'm going to mount the stamp on my Misty. Close the door to pick up the stamp, and then I'm going to go ahead and ink it up with some Versamark ink here. I'm going to be doing some clear embossing, but then we're going to iron that off later on in the video. So I've gone ahead and inked that up. I'll press down really hard, make sure I've got a good firm press there. Then I will put on some clear embossing powder, and then I'll go ahead and heat set that. Something you're not going to really be able to see because it's clear and it's white cardstock, but it's there, I promise. So this is some Aquatini and Meant to Be. I'm going to show you two ways you can watercolor this background here. I am just smushing some of that ink down onto my craft mat, and I am spritzing that watercolored cardstock with water. Then I'm just smushing that card panel all around in that ink. It's just that easy. It gives a really pretty subtle look. If you don't have a craft mat, you can use an acrylic block or a plastic plate, anything slippery. And this is kind of the look that resulted from that look, but I wanted something darker. So I just took some Aquatini ink pad and I swiped that right onto the paper there. Then I spritzed it with the water to get that water, moving that ink around a little bit. And then I'm dabbing off little areas here and there with a cloth there. And then I set that aside to dry. Or actually I used the heat gun there. And here's where we're going to do the iron off embossing. So when you emboss something, it's really shiny. I don't know if you can pick that up from the video, but we're going to basically iron off the shine. So I've got an iron here set to the cotton setting. I put it in between, that's a folded piece of copy paper, and then I'm just ironing off that embossing powder. You can see it lifting right onto that copy paper. No steam, no water, just the cotton setting. And then I've ironed off all the shine. So that looks like that's something I hand painted by removing that shine. Also by removing that shine, it gives you the ability to stamp directly onto that card panel. And if you left that embossing there, you wouldn't be able to do that because the embossing would resist anything you stamped. So here's a look at the Winterhaven dies. I'm using the border die in the set. Actually, it's like you can create a pretty snowy hilltop or something like that. But instead, I'm using it to kind of cut apart my card panel there. This is some party dress. I am going to ink this up with some white cardstock. There is another stamp set you're going to get a good look at in a minute, but it's the Joy Wreath Dies, and it cuts out the word joy, which I ran through that pink cardstock there. And there's also a really pretty wreath, which you saw a sneak of that just a second ago when I showed the card. So here I am kind of in the planning phase here. This is a piece of white cardstock here, and I am inking it up with some Rockin Red ink. And that's going to be kind of the underlying part of my card. You'll see what I mean in just a minute. You can see that red is going to be peeking through. I thought it was a little too red, so I'm taking some water and just spritzing that cardstock. That's not even watercolored cardstock, by the way. So I just spritzed it a little bit, it lightened it up and blended out the color just a little bit more. And now I'm going to adhere this panel to the card base there. And that Rockin Red is going to peek through that little tiny area we've got there. So I'm just adhering this down, leaving that gap. Here's where you can customize the width that you want. I didn't want too much of a gap. So I've got some hanging off the top of the card there, so I'm just going to flip it over and cut off the part that's overhanging. And now I've got the base of my card here. Here's where I'm thinking that joy is a little too light, so I'm going to end up making that joy black. And there's a look at that wreath. You're going to get a closer look at that in just a second. Oh, it's so pretty. So I ran it through my die cutting machine with some pink cardstock. It's absolutely gorgeous. All the detail here to this wreath is unbelievable. Isn't that pretty? And I decided to make the joy black, as you saw, because that pink was just kind of turned invisible, didn't it, in that background. So I'm using some Midnight ink here. All my inks are from Catherine Pooler, and thank God that lid did not mess my card up. All right, so this is some Shimmer Spray. I'm going to spray the wreath and the joy to get a little bit of shimmer. I didn't get as much shimmer as I wanted, so I'll end up adding a little bit more later. And this is some Multi Matte Medium. This glue is awesome. It's super strong, but dries completely clear. It's my favorite glue ever. I have bukus and bukus and bukus of it. And I'll go ahead and adhere that wreath to the card. Isn't that pretty? So pretty. And then I dab any of the glue that oozed out all over the place away. I'm going to do the same thing with the Joy using that multi-matte medium. And then I'm just going to adhere that right there. The black is so much better than the pink, I gotta say. Here's a little midnight ink. Let's add a little splatter. So I've just smushed some of that down onto my craft sheet, and I'll spray a little bit of water in there. And then I'll just take a paintbrush and flick on some. Now this is going to be a very light black because it's watered down a lot. So it's just a little bit of texture there. Not too much, but just enough, I think. Now this is a black multi-liner. I'm just going to go and run it across the edges, just so I have tie in a little bit of black, create a little bit of a border here. It's a very subtle look, but I think it helped pull everything together. Here's where I'm going to add a little bit more shimmer. This is a Nuvo glitter pen. You can use the Wink of Stella, whatever kind of shimmer pen you have. Add a little bit more. So I went through the whole wreath and added it to the wreath, and I also went over the Joy. So this card really sparkles a lot in real life, but it's so hard to capture on camera. But it really does sparkle. I promise. I promise. This is some Nuvo glitter drops in Ruby Red. I'm going to go in and add a little bit around the wreath with these glitter drops. Always test your any kind of embellishment that you use in a liquid form. I would always recommend testing out on some scratch paper or something so you don't get a big blob onto your project. So I'm going ahead and adding this little bit of here, a little bit of there for berries. And then I'm thumping the mess out of the back of the card so all of my peaks, I didn't want any pink, so it all kind of settles down. When it dries, it's a perfectly little round card there. It's so cool. So if you have problems with peaks, just thump the mess out of the back of your card and it'll settle down into place. So thanks so much for joining me today. It's been a while since I've made some videos. I'm trying to get back in the swing of things, and I will see you guys next time.